on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Tonight, final decision. President Maithripala assures the government stance on Sidam will be announced within 3 days. International concerns. War heroes are not above the law, says UN Special Rapporteur on his end-of-mission briefing.
I note with concern the use of rhetoric about war heroes never being brought to trial.
Right to question. Bar Association of Sri Lanka says that they will question the government over the requirement of a new constitution.
Will Sri Lanka continue to be a unitary state?
And in international headlines, winning again. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe secures a fresh term after winning Japanese elections. And in sports, walk of shame. Sri Lanka increases its losing streak with a whitewash as Pakistan wins the 5th and final one-day international. Good evening to all our viewers across Sri Lanka and around the world. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Our First at 9 coverage begins tonight with the visit of the special UN envoy to Sri Lanka. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice, reparation and guarantees of non-recurrence, Pablo de Grief, held his end-of-mission media briefing today. During his visit from the 10th to the 23rd of October, the UN human rights expert met with the President, Prime Minister, number of ministers and other high-level government and military officials. His visit to the country was aimed at reviewing the progress made thus far to identify obstacles and bottlenecks in the implementation of the transitional justice and reforms process and to discuss opportunities with the government and the Sri Lankan society to overcome these issues. The Special Rapporteur will present a comprehensive report containing his findings and recommendations to the Human Rights Council in September 2018.
Addressing the media briefing today, Special Rapporteur Pablo de Grief expressed concern on the use of the phrase "war heroes will never be brought to trial."
In this respect, I note with concern the use of rhetoric about war heroes never being brought to trial. This seems to me to misrepresent the target of transitional justice accountability measures by suggesting that it is a generally anti-security agenda and also by forgetting that no one who has committed violations of human rights or the laws of war deserves to be called a hero. Sifting precisely between the legitimate and lawful use of force and the contrary, under conditions in which all relevant due process guarantees are meticulously adhered to, and in which not only the rights of victims, but also the rights of suspects and of the accused are protected, is one of the points of transitional justice accountability. I will add that the promise mentioned above regarding war heroes is a legally unenforceable political statement and therefore cannot offer any real legal certainty. In order to make it effective, that promise would ultimately require a violation of the principle of the separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary, amongst others. Moreover, needless to say, it offers absolutely no warranty internationally.
Meanwhile, the UN Rapporteur emphasized that Sri Lanka now has unprecedented levels of international support because of country's willingness to interact with other nations openly. He commented on several developments made during the last 2 years. Pablo de Grief first made positive remarks on government's crucial contribution to the transitional justice debates, such as establishment of Secretary for coordinating reconciliation mechanisms. Special Rapporteur further went on to say that the establishment and work of the consultation task force on reconciliation reconciliation mechanisms is also an important development. He also observed that conversations about transitional justice have extended so as to include most stakeholders, including youth groups, academics, the media, Sri Lankan expats and the armed forces. Here, the rapporteur further expressed views on the establishment of the Office of Missing Persons.
The progress achieved in the creation, after a long delay, of the Office of Missing Persons at the OMP. While the process was protracted and involved insufficient communication with the public, the law has been enacted. It will be crucial for the Constitutional Council to select people that will bolster the credibility of the OMP by their moral standing and probity in the eyes of all communities, their expertise, their independence, and also the ability to collaborate and work expeditiously.
The government and the Foreign Ministry has, even before your visit, indicated in formal terms that they will not go by recommendations or they are not obliged to carry forward recommendations that you might have.
It is absolutely correct to say that the recommendations of special procedures are not legally binding. There is no contract, there is no agreement between member states and the instruments of the special procedures that makes those recommendations legally binding.
Let's move on to other local stories we have for you tonight. President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Attorney at Law U.R. De Silva, says that the public should be given more opportunities to present suggestions for the proposed new constitution. He expressed these remarks at a media briefing convened today, also elaborating on several concerns over the new constitution.
In the circumstances, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka requests the government to precisely and with clarity to respond to inter alia the following questions. What is the need, requirement for a new constitution? Will Sri Lanka continue to be a unitary state? If so, what is the concept of a unitary state? What powers will be devolved on provisions? Can the central government or parliament get back such powers if necessary? If so, in what manner? And in appropriate circumstances, would the president have the power to exercise direct rule in the provisions? Will the executive presidency be abolished? What would be the court structure? With that amendment to the constitution, we want to find out whether these questions can be answered by the government, and if so, then we know what steps we should take. And with regard to the amendments to the constitution, we are of the view that people should be given more and more opportunity to come forward their suggestions, and then after that, with a broad view, can be taken into consideration, and thereafter we can see whether it is necessary or it is appropriate to have a new constitution or such amendments are necessary.
Minister of National Coexistence, Dialogue and Official Languages, Mano Ganeshan, says racial issues can be solved by the introduction of the new constitution. He made this remark at an event in Colombo today.
Racial issues are one of the main problems in our country. This issue has travelled all the way to Geneva. Why did some people travel all the way there to meet Al-Hussein and the United Nations? We must not forget that this is a democratic social republic, and if such issues take place, then the United Nations has the right to pay attention. We should have paid more attention to this issue, but we did not. We must find solutions to our country's problem, and the only way we can do this is by forming a new constitution. What we presented in Parliament was not the draft constitutional proposal, but the interim report of the steering committee pertaining to draft constitution. There are those who do not understand this. This is just the beginning of a process for a new constitution. There is still more time.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says reconciliation cannot be expected through a new constitution that is being brought up forcefully amidst objections from the entire nation. The former head of state responded to questions raised by journalists in Colombo today.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa arrived at the Sri Lanka Vidyalaya Mahapirivana to pay his respect to Venerable Dr. Naguda Amaravancha Thera, who passed away last morning. The former president also responded to questions raised by media.
මැතිවරණ ජනවාරි තිබුණ තියෙනවා කුවට ආණ්ඩු ඇමතිවරයෙක් කියනවා මේ පෙබරවාරි කියලා.
ඇමතිවරු කියනවා එක එක දින.
They say various dates. We don't know. You should ask from them on when it will be held. We are ready no matter what. It's been postponed since they are afraid. We can expect a massive victory.
අපිට විශාල ජයග්‍රහණයක් ඇති.
බෞද්ධයන්ට මේ විවස්ථාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් මොකක්ද අදහස මේ?
මල්වත්ත අස්ගිරිය රාමඤ්ඤනිකාය.
Malvattu and Askiri chapters, including Ramanya sector, Kotte and Rohan sectors, have expressed their objections. The whole country is against this, including Mahasangha. Even the Catholic Church have asked them tread carefully in this regard. How can we have reconciliation when they try and force this new constitution amidst objection from the whole nation? A government who do not listen to Mahasangha will not remain in power for too long.
වැඩි කල් තියාගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා.
Well, let's stay on the subject of constitution. With the government's efforts to introduce a new constitution, it has been the main topic across various political and social platforms. But what is the importance of a constitution and how does it play a pivotal role in a country's progress? Kenyan academic and expert in constitutional law, Professor Yash Pal Gai, who has played an advisory role in the making and negotiation of constitution to over 15 countries, including Sri Lanka, says that obtaining recommendations from various stakeholders, which is a first for Sri Lanka, is indeed a promising start.
I have read the very lengthy report that resulted from these consultations, and I'm impressed by the document that has been produced. There also seems to be considerable consensus on how the people want their state structured. It is a very promising start, and I do hope that parliamentarians will pay full attention to that document.
Professor Gai also spoke on the direction a country's constitution must take.
I think the ideal constitution would be one which acknowledged the diversity of the people and respected the culture of all the communities, and everyone should be proud of the achievements of other communities, so it shouldn't be seen as something that belongs to them. It belongs to the entire people of the country. Then making a distinction between public life, politics, civil service, where a different norm should prevail, where the norm would be, well, we are all Sri Lankans. I know it's not always easy and it's not very common, but if you look around the globe, there are many, many countries which have similar problems to yours. In a way, what I'm saying is we are trying to separate the cultural, other dimensions of a society, of individuals, from their role in public life. Public life, we all come as citizens with equal entitlements, and this will then have to be translated into quite detailed provisions of the Constitution. But the first step would be to determine how do you conceive of Sri Lanka now and the future? Do you want to continue to be based de facto, if not de jure, not by law necessarily, but in practice, that it is a country of so many communities? And somehow politics is about balancing of these interests, representation of particular groups, but always talking of groups, ethnicity, rather than citizenship.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back, everyone. President Maithripala says that the government's decision over the site of medical college will be announced within the next few days. President Sirisena made this remark today addressing a religious event held at the Orbiter.
President Maithripala Sirisena participated at a religious event held at the Abhinavaramaya temple in Timbirapola. The president received a warm welcome by school children of Rajasingha College, Ruanwalda.
And පහුගිය සතියේ මම කිව්වා මේ රටේ බොහෝ දෙනෙකුගේ අවධානය යොමු වී තිබෙන සයිටම්.
I said that I will find a solution relating to CITEM issue and its students as well as students from state universities by the end of this week. We had a meeting last evening with related parties, and in 2 or 3 days, we as a government will announce our final decision. The government will be faced with challenges and issues, but we will find a solution by constant communication, dialogue and gathering of facts.
විසඳුම් ලබා ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
UPFA parliamentarian Uday Gammanpilla states that the Presidential Commission of Inquiry investigating the Treasury bond issue concluded at a crucial point. The parliamentarian made these remarks addressing the media following a party meeting held at Vilachia in Anuradhapura.
The bond commission concluded at its peak. They have done great injustice to public due to concluding the bond commission. The same police who arrested people for stealing coconuts have failed to arrest any suspect who threatened the witnesses of the bond commission. The Inspector General of Police, who often bends the law, has failed to take action against the thieves of bonds.
නීතිය නවන පොලිස්පතිතුමාගේ නීතිය බඳුන් කර හොරු ඉදිරියේ නම් බිම ගෑවෙන්නම නැමිලා තියෙන බවයි මේ සිද්ධීන් වලින් අපිට පේන්නේ.
Minister of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Mahinda Amaraweera says that he will not be disheartened by criticism levelled against him. He made the remark at the SLFP's Hambantota electorate meeting held in Tangor yesterday.
They carried out a protest recently but couldn't gather 1/20 of people gathered for the port protest. Why did that happen? Because people believed in President Maithripala. And in the end, innocents had to go to prison. Most of them were supporters of the SLFP. If we could, we would gladly take action to release them. Mahinda Amaraweera will be the first to stand on behalf of the people of Hambantota when they get into trouble. I'm not afraid of criticism. They will only make me stronger.
Also in local news, one person was killed while 7 others were arrested today following a shooting between the police special task force and an alleged criminal gang near a school in Hanpitagedra, Dulapitia. The STF conducted a raid upon information received on an alleged criminal gang loitering in the area of Dulapitia. 2 individuals were reportedly present when the STF arrived at the location. It was also reported that a vehicle belonging to the suspects was also seen in the vicinity. One suspect who opened fire prompted the STF personnel to counterattack. 2 suspects sustained injuries, while one suspect who has been in a critical condition succumbed to his injuries at the Dulapitia hospital. The body of the deceased was brought to the Gampha Base Hospital for post-mortem examination. Meanwhile, the remaining suspects who were initially admitted to the Minuangoda Base Hospital were also transferred to the Gampha Base Hospital for further treatment. The deceased suspect was identified as a former Sri Lanka Navy officer. 7 other suspects and a vehicle were taken into police custody, while 1 hand grenade, 3 pistols were also discovered in possessions of the suspects. According to the police media spokesperson, UNP Western Provincial Councillor Randi Rodrigo is among the suspects, while 115 bullets of several types, a body armor kit and a pistol host were discovered during a raid conducted on the residence of the councillor. Meanwhile, the wife and the said councillor has also been taken into custody by the Wattala police. Well, non-communicable diseases, mainly heart diseases, diabetes, respiratory diseases and cancer, kills 40 million people each year, yet humankind seems to continue asking for them. As society continues to modernize, seeking an easier lifestyle, non-communicable diseases have marked a fresh target: children. First at 9's Sadhani Upeka took a look into the alarming rise of NCDs among children and to the measures that could be taken to combat this chilling trend.
Causing more than 2/3 of all deaths in Sri Lanka, non-communicable diseases lead nearly 1 in 5 people to premature death. Heart disease, diabetes, respiratory diseases and cancer are among the leading culprits in this cartel of diseases. The Department of Census and Statistics states that among these, 2% of the population suffers from heart disease, 8% from high blood pressure and 5% from high blood cholesterol. In addition, 6% suffer from diabetes. While in the past, these diseases were mostly seen among the elderly, nowadays their age of onset is decreasing dramatically. School children are now increasingly vulnerable to diabetes and heart disease.
Most of our children are obese. That's around 15% in some schools. Some schools, it's more than that.
Speaking to First at 9, Director on Non-Communicable Diseases at the Ministry of Health, Dr. VTSK Sirivardhana discussed the government's efforts to thwart this trend.
If you see in the market, almost all the beverages carry a color code. That is to say the amount of sugar available in those products. We have national guidelines on school canteens. The duty is with the school staff to check whether these guidelines are adhered every day. Otherwise, just sending a guideline doesn't work. In the future, we will be introducing some system to control advertising because there are wrong advertising on foods. Education Ministry has issued a circular to involve the children in at least one physical activity or outdoor sports. There is a multi-sectional action plan developed by the Sri Lankan government and it is on implementation at the moment.
The government alone, however, cannot do this single-handedly. The public too must take action. Professor in Pediatrics at the University of Colombo, Professor Pujith Wickramasinghe, asserts that the steps to combat early onset of non-communicable diseases must begin from infancy, particularly during the first 1,000 days of life.
Most of the body's functions are programmed during this period of time. One of the key things is the feeding and then regularly taking the weight and the length of the baby and then putting down on the chart given by the government and see whether there is proper growth happening. They should not undergrow nor they should overgrow because sometimes people think when the baby is putting on a lot of weight that the baby would be very healthy. So beyond a certain point it should not happen. Giving mother's milk is the most important thing in the initial phase of life. The mother should be able to feed the child a complete wholesome meal that it should have the grain, fruits and vegetables, piece of fish and some pulses and make that wholesome meal and give the child.
Consultant endocrinologist and diabetologist and senior lecturer at the Colombo Medical Faculty, Dr. Prasad Katulanda, stressed that parents, children as well as teachers must be aware of what they can do to avoid early onset of non-communicable diseases.
We all need to cut down on sugar and also sugar added food, beverages as well as high starch food. Children should be encouraged to take more green vegetables, at least minimum 5 portions of green vegetables and green fruits a day. Teachers, parents and children all have a responsibility towards increasing the physical activity of children. To control children using sedentary leisure time activities related to devices like mobile phones, tabs, computers, video games, television, I think the schools as well as parents have a big role on encouraging the children and getting them used to physical exercise and getting them enjoy physical exercise.
Well, here's a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
Members of 5 safari jeep unions in Tissamaharama and Kataragama launched a protest today against new limitations of vehicles entering the Yala National Park. The national park, which was closed for renovation of infrastructure, reopened today with several new regulations, including the limitation of the number of safari vehicles entering the park to 300 per day. 4 individuals were admitted to the Aturugiriya hospital last night after a VIP vehicle belonging to a police special task force collided with a van travelling from the opposite direction on the Aturugiriya flyover, which is currently under construction. Meanwhile, another accident occurred in the same location within 2 hours after a motorbike rider lost control, causing the vehicle to collide with safety barriers. The administration of the University of Colombo today extended the temporary close down of the Faculty of Arts by another week. The arts faculty was temporarily shut down last Tuesday following a clash between 2 student groups.
On to business news now. Stocks were lower after the close today as losses in the palm oil, information technology and trading sectors led shares lower. At the close in Colombo, the CSE all share fell 0.03%. Let's get a full report of the day's trading. For that, let's cross over to Imeshi Fernando at the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Top 5 gainers of the day were Sathusa Motors, Radiant Gems, Serendip Hotels, Nation Lanka Finance and Asia Asset Finance, while the top 5 losers were Lanka Ashok Leyland, Serendip Engineering Group, AIA Insurance, Ceylon Beverage Holdings and Malan Phipps. Today's foreign purchases were 628.1 million rupees and foreign sales were 611.07 million rupees.
Watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Let's move on to international news now. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe emerged victorious in the snap general elections held yesterday, with the ruling coalition led by the Liberal Democratic Party securing the crucial two-thirds majority. Shinzo Abe's win is expected to work in favour of achieving his long-term goal to reform Japan's pacifist constitution, while also making him Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister.
International media reports that 80% of the seats have been claimed by parties in favour of amending the constitution, which had been drafted by the US. Prime Minister Abe says the election was primarily about the North Korean threat, while pledging to take strong countermeasures against North Korea. Abe also added that he intends to speak with the US President Donald Trump on issues related to North Korea during Trump's visit to Japan next month.
5 months of military operations came to a close in the Philippine city of Marawi, which had been held by insurgents loyal to so-called Islamic State, following a fierce urban war that has marked the country's biggest security crisis in years. Making the announcement today, Philippine Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana confirmed that there are no pro-IS militants remaining in the city.
Offensive combat operations were terminated after troops prevailed in the last stand against rebel gunmen who had refused to surrender and were sheltering inside several buildings in the heart of Marawi. Authorities said that 920 fighters, 165 troops and police and at least 45 civilians were killed in the conflict so far, which has also displaced more than 300,000 people. The battle had sparked fears that IS may gain a foothold in Southeast Asia by influencing and funding local militants amid battle defeats in Syria and Iraq.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
On to sports, Sharjah has been memorable for both Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Pakistan dominated an entire series, but the Sri Lankan encountered a disappointing whitewash. Sri Lanka's horror run in the one-day international series continued as they suffered a 9-wicket thrashing against Pakistan in the 5th and final one-day international.
And it is very warm.
Usman Khan was the destroyer tonight as he clinched 5 for 34, smashing the top order. No Sri Lankan batsman exceeded a 30-plus mark and many fell for single figures, putting up a meagre total of 103 and destroying hopes of avoiding a whitewash.
That's the end of it. Played on.
Pakistan came into bat with a positive mind, knowing that there wasn't much to defend. Imamul Haq and Fakhar Zaman built up a 84-run opening stand, almost finishing duty. Fakhar Zaman was later caught by Dikwalla for 48. Pakistan was unstoppable as they achieved the target of 104, keeping 9 wickets in hand.
More cricket. New Zealand announced their arrival in India in grand fashion by defeating their hosts by 6 wickets at the Wankhede Stadium. The match made history as Ross Taylor and Tom Latham built the highest partnership for the 4th wicket.
Electing to bat first at Wankhede, Indian opening pair Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma fell for just 29 runs. Coming into play, captain Virat Kohli made his 200th ODI a memorable one as he scored a brilliant knock of 121, including 9 fours and 2 sixes.
In his 200th Test match.
India managed to put up a challenging target of 280 for the loss of 8 wickets. Youngster Trent Bolt clinched 4 wickets for 35 runs.
The skipper does, tough one.
Chasing a 200-plus target, New Zealand could not get a stable start as their top 3 batsmen fell for 80. Ross Taylor together with Tom Latham built up an outstanding 200-run partnership, making the challenging total look easy. A 95-run knock by Taylor and a stunning century by Latham shepherded the Kiwis towards victory. New Zealand now leads the 3-match ODI series 1-0.
Just comes and slogs the first ball. How cool is that?
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, temperatures for tomorrow are expected to be at around 27 degrees Celsius in the western half of the country. The east coast, though, will be much warmer, hitting 32 degrees Celsius in the northeast. However, cooler temperatures in the low 20s will continue in the central hills. Now, a low pressure zone is expected to form across the island during the day with widespread showers and thunder showers. That's it from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Derana 24/7. I'm Mahesh Johnny. We will return tomorrow first at 9. Be sure to join us then. And before we go, we'd like to take you on a dive off the coast of Colombo to explore the Lotus barge shipwreck, which now boasts an array of resplendent corals and marine life. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.